I'm an avid hunter and I spend most of my weekends out in the woods, tracking game and enjoying the peace and quiet of nature. But one weekend, everything changed. It was a beautiful fall day and I decided to head out to my favorite hunting spot. I set up my gear and began tracking a deer that I had spotted earlier. As I was following the deer, I noticed something strange. The woods were entirely silent. No birds chirping, no leaves rustling, nothing. It was an eerie feeling, but I brushed it off and continued on. After a while of tracking the deer, I realized that I had turned myself around and I was lost. I couldn't find my way back from where I came. Panic had started to set in, but I tried to stay calm and think logically. I decided to try to climb a nearby tree to get a better view of my surroundings. As I climbed higher and higher, I suddenly heard a loud snap. The branch that I was standing on had broken, and I fell to the ground with a thud. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't move. My leg was broken. I was alone, lost and injured. Night was approaching, and I knew that I had to find shelter soon. I crawled along the ground, using my rifle as a crutch, and I stumbled upon a small cabin. I was relieved to have found shelter, but something didn't feel right. The door was unlocked and the cabin was empty. There was a fireplace, a few chairs, and a bed. It looked like somebody had lived there, but there was no one around. Maybe a hunting cabin. As I settled in for the night, I could hear strange noises coming from outside. I couldn't tell what it was, but it sounded like something was scratching at the door. I thought that it might be an animal, so I grabbed my rifle and I aimed it at the door. Suddenly, the door had burst open and a figure rushed in. It was a man covered in dirt and leaves, and he was holding a machete. I aimed my rifle at him and told him to back off, but he didn't listen. He lunged at me with the machete and we started to struggle. Somehow, I was able to get him off of me and I made it out the door. Obviously, I wasn't moving very quickly with my leg, but I hobbled along and found cover. I spent the rest of the night huddled out in the forest, waiting for daylight to come. When morning finally arrived, I managed to let my way back to the way that I came and call for help. It turned out that the man who had attacked me had been living in the woods for months, hiding out in abandoned cabins and preying on unsuspecting hunters. He had been wanted by the police for several crimes, and I had inadvertently stumbled upon his hideout. I never went back to that hunting spot again. The experience had left me shaken and terrified. It had taught me to always be prepared and aware of my surroundings, and to never let my guard down, no matter how familiar the area might seem. The woods are beautiful, but they can also be dangerous. That day, I learned that the hard way. Several years ago, I was maybe 19 or 20, and we lived in the state's capital. Some family friends were coming to visit us during that summer, and my mom wanted to cook a particular dish for them. This dish is best served the next day as the flavors had time to develop. However, we needed chorizo sausage to make the dish, something my mom forgot about until 7 p.m. that night. As this was in the Midwest, chorizo was hard to come by, so a quick Google search revealed a small butcher shop close to our state capitol building. Mom called and they said that they had chorizo. Dad volunteered to go get it, and I agreed to go along because I was bored. When we got into our nice Cadillac Escalade, this is important to note, plugged the directions into our GPS and drove down. And while we were maybe 100 yards away from our state's capitol building, which is actually pretty nice, the neighborhood this butcher shop was in was not. The streetlights were out, windows were dark, houses had peeling paint. Some were boarded up and there were no cars in sight or anyone else around, not even walking their dogs. Something about this place gave me a weird vibe, and I mentioned to Dad that we should get the heck out of there. but we had a mission and good luck trying to convince Dad to change his mind about something. We go into this butcher shop, and I don't know how in the world they managed to run without a visit from the health inspector, but holy cow, was it bad. It was hot and sticky inside, and I didn't hear any humming from the display cases, meaning the cooling elements weren't working. Inside the grimy display case are pork trotters, pig ears, and pork belly, and the flies were buzzing around them. The floors hadn't been mopped or even swept in God knows how long. How do I know this? Because we're leaving shoe imprints, and our shoe prints were the only ones there. As I pretended to busy myself by browsing the shelves, in reality, I was scanning the store and watching the exit for trouble because I didn't feel right being there. Dad asked the husband and wife manning the counter about the chorizo, to which they responded that they had sold out of the last of it, but they had plenty of fresh ingredients to make around for the right price. As Dad was trying to get his way out of their haggling and asking for directions for the closest grocery store, I noticed movement outside the smudged-in, smeared glass door. There were 4 burly-looking shadows outside, close to our car, which wasn't the only car out there, but a beautiful Escalade with all the bells, whistles, and it had just been detailed. In other words, we were a giant bullseye. Thinking fast, I pretended to look at my phone. "Hey Dad, Mom asked Lucia and she had plenty of chorizo," I said, a bit more cheerily than I had intended. Before Dad could ask what the heck was going on, I grabbed his arm and tugged at him. After a quick thank you, we got out of there. Fortunately, the burly shapes were gone. My knees were like jello, wobbling, and I was still on the adrenaline high. Dad was looking at me confused. "Hey, we don't even know a Lucia," he said as he unlocked the car door. "I know, I just wanted to get out of there because I had a bad feeling," I admitted as we both got in, locked the doors, and turned on the ignition. The car's headlights turned on, and not even 10 feet away were the 4 burly shapes. They were just standing there. They were 4 men, middle-aged, dressed in jeans, t-shirts, and caps. I noticed one of them was holding a crowbar, and they started walking towards us. I screamed, "Dad, get out of here." He didn't need to be told twice. Dad gunned it, and the Escalade, which is built for not only beauty but speed, accelerated. The men jumped out of the way and we took off down the road. We didn't stop until we were home. Mom was more glad we were okay than about the chorizo, especially when she learned what had happened. Fortunately, we were able to find some the next day at a reputable supermarket that specialized in Latino food. So, 4 guys dressed like thugs and carrying a crowbar. Let's not meet. I'm going to tell you the story of a terrifying old creep that had stalked me since I was 16 years old. I'm currently a 20-year-old female. So basically, to set the scene, I'm an average height, average size, 20-year-old female. I've been told I'm very approachable and perhaps too nice to strangers. I sometimes just don't have the heart to tell them to get away, and I definitely should. Obviously, I'm not going to give specific details, but I worked in a restaurant which was inside a bigger shopping center. My stalker, an old man named Eric, worked for the actual shopping center itself and not a store inside it like me. When I was 16 and first started my job, I was quite timid and awkward, and let anyone say pretty much anything to me. I didn't quite know what to say when older customers and other employees would make inappropriate comments to me. I would simply just laugh off whatever people would say or not respond. In my 16-year-old mind, this was a lot easier to handle. I had one other friend at my job who was my age, and her name was Jessica. Jessica had worked there for a lot longer than I had, and one day she asked me if I had heard of this guy who worked in the shopping center called Eric. Jessica described Eric as very strange. She didn't describe him as frightening or unsettling, or even someone to be afraid of, just as a very eccentric man. Really, she and other employees would laugh at his odd sayings and awkward behavior. Jessica has also told me that Eric had brought her a present on Valentine's Day: chocolate. Many would think this was friendly behavior or harmless flirting, if he wasn't a 50-something-year-old man bringing chocolates to a 16-year-old girl he barely knows. I began to see for myself that Eric wasn't just an innocent old man with a slight crush. He had other intentions. The first time I remember Eric approaching me was when I was filling up a machine near the entrance of my work. The machine was out of the view of all of the employees and the restaurant was empty, so this was pretty much the perfect time for a creep to approach without being seen. Eric wasn't supposed to enter my place of work when he was working at the shopping center, so he had deliberately gone out of his way to come and speak to me. To describe his appearance, he was your typical creepy old loner. He was gaunt, had gray hair with bald patches, and had beady little eyes which he never averted from yours, and I can't get him out of my head till this day. Eric must have sneaked up on me, as I looked up and he was standing right next to me, a little too close and I could feel his breath on my cheek. My name is Lucy, Eric asked me. Lucy, are you married? He almost giggled after he asked me this. He had a smirk on his face which made me feel as if he was trying to pretend that he thought I was older than I was, and at 16, I looked 16. Eric liked to ask me questions that he already knew the answer to, just to see what my reaction would be, letting me know in his own way that he had been looking up information about me on social media. He would do this frequently. I began to clock on to the fact that Eric had been going a little further than just approaching me at work, and instead stalking my social media accounts in the weeks following this first encounter, such as Twitter and Instagram, when he began asking me very specific questions about things I had posted about in the days before. For example, I had posted on Instagram about a tattoo that I got, which was in homage to my favorite band. I was serving a customer one day, only to be interrupted by a shrill but quiet voice. It was Eric. His eyes were huge and he had a look of pure excitement and menace on his face. He had yet again entered my workplace when he wasn't supposed to, just to talk to me. He asked me, Lucy, what's your favorite, insert the band's name here, song? Eric relished in my discomfort. You could see by my reaction that I was clocking on the fact that he had been viewing my personal social media, and the thought of that made my blood run cold. I felt disgusting and violated. The tattoo that I had gotten was covered by my work uniform, so the only way you could have seen it was by going through my Instagram page. This creeped me out majorly, but somehow I just forced myself to forget all about it and I carried on working. Over the course of a few months, Eric would come into my workplace more and more frequently, asking me bizarre questions and still reciting back to me things that I tweeted about or posted on Instagram. Every time I would see him, I would get visibly uncomfortable, and he liked this and this is what he wanted. All the while this was happening, Jessica approached me and let me know that Eric had followed her in his car on her walk home from work, slowing down to ask her where she lived. I also had been told other disturbing news about Eric from multiple different people. It seemed as if he was becoming more invested in whatever his intentions were towards me and Jessica. News had traveled to one of my managers about Eric's unsettling actions towards me, and this manager informed me that a few years ago, Eric was rumored to have followed a young girl who used to work for our restaurant into a toilet. Things didn't quite make sense to me. He was known for being a creep, yet still employed at the shopping center. On one hand, I was glad to know I wasn't just creeped out for no reason, but on the other hand, I was frightened as he had been doing this for years, yet no one had stopped him. Anyways, there was a woman who worked at the same place as me called Rebecca, and she had some sort of disability which caused her to befriend and be trusting of people without knowing anything about them. It seems that Eric took advantage of her, as he had asked for her phone number and she gave it to him. Rebecca had shown me her text messages with Eric. He had texted her things like, "Rebecca, are you alone?" and "Rebecca, are you sat on the bus alone?" But the most unsettling part of it all was the text from Eric that read, "Rebecca, could you please let me know any information on the girls that work at insert restaurant name here?" I was stunned. This was quite slowly turning into my nightmare. I was constantly questioning why this old man was so hell-bent on finding out everything to do with my life. Why me? He had gone out of his way to source information about me through a vulnerable person that I worked with, and I was scared that he was going to go further. Again, this creeped me out, but still, for some reason, I forgot about it and carried on with my life, which was very hectic at the time. And in a way, I'm grateful that I didn't have the time to dwell on Eric's growing obsession. However, this was something I wouldn't be able to ignore forever, as Eric began inserting himself into my life in ways I just couldn't ignore or brush off. One night, I was watching the movie Grease with my family, and I must have tweeted something stupid like, "Grease is my favorite film," because it's a great film, right? Anyways, the morning after my tweet, Eric approaches me in his usual way and utters, "Do you like the film Grease, Lucy?" The same usual smirk lit up his face and the same usual wave of disgust washed over me. He was really making it a point to let me know that he was watching me. I tried to carry on with my day, but spent the entirety of my shift feeling a little shaken up. To someone reading this story, it may not seem as unsettling to you as it did to me at the time, but when someone is going out of their way to make you know they know information about you, you spend every waking hour about what they plan to do with this information, and why they insist on taunting you with this knowledge. The very second I clocked out of work and got into my car, my phone went off. This was a notification for PayPal. I clicked on the notification to see that I had received £3 from an Eric Stanley, and the note attached to it read, "To Lucy, Grease is the word," from Eric. He literally found my PayPal account and sent me £3 with a quote from the movie attached to it. If this wasn't crazy enough, in the days following, I received a string of anonymous calls, incessant calls one after the other. I was in a flood of tears and ended up having a huge panic attack. I felt like there was no escape. My phone rang and rang and rang all night. I had to turn it off to get away. Even when I turned my phone back on, the calls continued, and every time my phone would ring, my head felt like I was being impaled with the sharpest knife in the world. I was on complete edge. The phone calls that I did answer were just someone breathing down the phone, making a point to breathe heavy. I even swear that they were trying to sound like they were playing with themselves, which sickened me. I had no proof this was Eric, but it wasn't hard to put two and two together, after all the lengths he had gone in order to track down my personal information. If he had found out my PayPal address, my phone number, and all of my social media accounts, what was stopping him from finding where I live, breaking in, hurting me or my family? That night, I had horrific dreams in which he chased me around my house and taunted me for hours. I still have similar dreams and struggle to sleep without my boyfriend present, as I'm scared he's standing right outside my door to this day. I reported Eric to my managers and they passed my complaint on to the managers of the shopping center. At this point, I was genuinely scared for my safety. Multiple girls added to my statement and added details of times they had witnessed Eric's unsettling behavior, or times that he had been inappropriate with them too. Eric had been cautioned by the shopping center's management, yet nothing was done, except the fact that he was warned not to talk to me. Eric found ways about getting around the no talking to Lucy rule. He would make animal noises at me when he would see me, like a monkey or a dog or any bizarre noise that would get my attention. I think he just wanted me to think that he had outsmarted me, that he had found a way around the rules. After this, I stopped working at the restaurant as a full-time job. I saw Eric less and less, which was obviously great for me. I moved cities as I went away for university and made new friends which distracted me from my old life in my hometown. I still thought about Eric every now and then, and when I focus on it for too long, I can't be alone, out of fear that he's still keeping tabs on me. The thought of that terrifies me. After moving away and starting my new life, I forgot all about the twisted man who used to obsess over me at my old job. I forgot he existed, but I was soon going to remember. On Christmas Day, I was back home in my hometown with my parents. My phone buzzed and I expected it to just be another message from a friend or a family member, but I was wrong. I received a notification from PayPal. It was the exact amount of £3, only not from Eric this time, but from a girl whose name I didn't recognize at all. I opened up the PayPal app only to see a note attached to this payment that I had received. The note read, "Sending on behalf of Eric." My blood ran cold again. I had forgotten all about this man and all he had done to make me feel unsafe and unsettled. And here he was again, antagonizing me, yet this time doing it through other people. Perhaps his way of telling me that him being banned from talking to me himself won't stop him from entering my world. I threw my phone down on the couch and spent the night drinking with family, until I forgot about the notification. I probably should have told somebody about it, but I just wanted to do as much as I could to block him out. I didn't want him to control me anymore, and since I hadn't seen or heard anything from him, I wanted it to stay that way. I think Eric still works at that shopping center and lives local to me. I avoid my old workplace so I don't have to see him, and he doesn't have to see me. So, to the creepy, beady-eyed freak that made me live in fear, let's not meet again.